I was branded uneducated and kicked out by my parents, but they never knew I built a $15 million company. Then I moved into my beach house and went no contact. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I was always the weird kid in my family. While my siblings, Thomas and Jennifer, were doing the whole traditional thing, good grades, college prep, following every rule, I was out there trying to make money however I could. I'm talking like when I was 10 years old, I had this elaborate lemonade stand that put other kids to shame. I had different flavors, loyalty punch cards, the whole 9 yards. Other kids thought I was nuts, but I made decent money for a 10-year-old. By 13, I was fixing people's computers for $20 an hour when the local repair shop was charging 75%. I taught myself everything from YouTube and forums. I spent hours troubleshooting problems that certified technicians couldn't figure out. My parents thought it was cute, but also kind of concerning. Dad would always say stuff like, "Amanda needs to focus on her real studies. These little games won't pay the bills when she grows up." My dad, William, was an accountant at the same boring firm for like 30 years, a super traditional guy who thought college was literally the only way to succeed in life. My mom, Patricia, was an elementary school teacher, pretty quiet, and usually just agreed with whatever Dad said. They had this vision of success that was good grades, good college, good job, good life. Anything outside that formula was basically failure to them. Thomas and Jennifer ate it up. They were the perfect kids, honor roll, student council, all the college prep stuff. I tried to care about that stuff, but it felt so pointless. While they were joining clubs to look good on applications, I was learning actual business skills, teaching myself web design, and reading every business book I could get my hands on. In high school, I started an online store selling customized phone cases. This was before everyone was doing it, so I was pretty early to the game. I designed them myself, found manufacturers, handled customer service, shipping, returns, basically ran a whole operation out of my bedroom. I made almost $2,000 before graduation, which felt like $1 million to me at the time. But my parents couldn't see past the fact that my GPA wasn't perfect. They kept pushing me toward college, saying things like, "You can do your little computer hobby on the side, but you need a real education first." It was frustrating as hell because I was already learning more from running my business than any of my classmates were learning in their AP classes. The worst part was family dinners. Thomas would talk about his internship at some accounting firm. Jennifer would brag about making the dean's list, and when it came to me sharing about my business, Dad would just kind of nod and change the subject, like my achievements didn't count because they weren't happening in a classroom. Looking back, I think they were scared for me. In their minds, success looked exactly one way, and I was completely off script. But at the time, it just felt like they thought I was stupid or lazy, when really, I was working harder than anyone else in the family. To keep the peace, I agreed to try community college. Huge mistake. I lasted exactly one semester before I wanted to scream. The business classes were taught by professors who had never actually run a business. They just read from textbooks about theories that didn't match what I was experiencing in the real world. Meanwhile, I was itching to work on my actual business ideas. When I told my parents I was dropping out, World War II broke out in our house. The argument lasted 4 whole days. Dad was furious, face bright red, yelling about how I was throwing my life away. No child of mine will be a college dropout, working minimum wage jobs forever. Mom cried a lot. Jennifer and Thomas looked at me like I had completely lost my mind, but I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was wasting time sitting in classes when I could be out there actually building something. So, at 19, I packed up my stuff and moved out with $2,000 in savings from my various side hustles. Those first few months were brutal, not going to lie. I found this tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood where you definitely didn't do laundry after dark. I lived on ramen noodles and whatever was on sale at the grocery store. I worked 18-hour days trying to build my e-commerce platform while my parents kept calling to ask when I was coming to my senses and going back to school. My first 3 business attempts crashed and burned spectacularly. The first was a dropshipping thing that went sideways when suppliers sent out defective products and customers started demanding refunds I couldn't afford. I lost about $800 on that one. Then I tried social media management for small businesses, but I was so desperate for clients that I underpriced everything and ended up working 20 hours a day for basically nothing. I burned out hard and lost most of my clients when I couldn't keep up. The third attempt was handmade jewelry. I'm not artistic at all, it turns out. I made some decent stuff but couldn't figure out how to scale beyond selling at local markets. Each failure sucked. But I was learning things they don't teach in business school: how to deal with difficult suppliers, how to price services properly, how to manage cash flow when you're barely scraping by. My family's reaction to these failures was not supportive. Dad would call and leave voicemails like, "This is exactly what we warned you about. It's not too late to go back to school." Thomas would text me job listings for entry-level positions with "thought you might be interested" messages. They meant well, I think, but it felt like they were just waiting for me to fail so they could say, "I told you so." The turning point came when I met Sophia at a networking event. She was probably 20 years older than me, had built and sold multiple businesses, and for some reason took an interest in helping me out. She became the mentor I desperately needed, someone who actually understood what I was trying to do and didn't think I was crazy for not following the traditional path. "Education comes in many forms, Amanda," she told me over coffee one day. "Some of the most successful people I know learned by doing, not by sitting in classrooms." It was the first time in years someone had validated my choices instead of questioning them. With Sophia's guidance, I finally got my act together. At 22, I launched Heartland Made, an e-commerce platform connecting small American manufacturers with customers who wanted locally made products. The timing was perfect because there was this huge trend towards supporting small businesses and made in America stuff. I started small, just 27 artisan partners in 3 states. My apartment was basically half office, half living space. I had a futon that doubled as my couch and bed. My desk and printer took up most of the room. I worked from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day, handling everything myself: website coding, customer service, accounting, marketing, you name it. The breakthrough came about 8 months in when a popular lifestyle blogger featured one of our partners. Orders started flooding in and completely overwhelmed our basic systems. I worked 72 hours straight, trying to fulfill orders and upgrade our website so it wouldn't crash. I made $10,000 in revenue that weekend, more money than I'd ever seen in my bank account. I was so excited I called my parents to share the news. Dad's response? "That's nice, honey, but it's probably just temporary. You know, you can always go back to college when this thing runs its course." His words stung, but they also lit a fire under me. I was going to prove him wrong, not with arguments, but with results. The next 5 years were insane. Heartland Made grew way beyond what I originally imagined. We went from 27 partners to over 400 manufacturers and craftspeople across all 50 states. Every stage of growth brought new challenges that nearly broke me, but also taught me things no college course ever could. When our servers crashed during a major Black Friday promotion, I stayed up 48 hours straight with developers getting everything back online while personally responding to hundreds of angry customer emails. When a bigger competitor tried to poach our best sellers by offering better commission rates, I drove around the country meeting with each partner in person, strengthening relationships and improving our terms. The most difficult period was year 2 when we were growing too fast for our cash flow. We had inventory needs that were outpacing revenue, and I went 4 months without paying myself a salary. I moved to an even smaller apartment, ate nothing but rice and beans, and negotiated payment terms with suppliers while trying not to let them know how close we were to going under. But we made it through, and those lean months taught me financial discipline that served me well as the company expanded. By year 3, we hit $1 million in annual revenue. I celebrated alone in my office with a single glass of champagne after everyone went home, thinking about how far I'd come from that first failed dropshipping business. Here's the thing, though, I kept my success pretty quiet with my family. They knew I had some kind of website business that was doing okay, but I downplayed everything. Part of me was scared they'd find some way to minimize it, and part of me was still seeking their approval in this weird way. So when my family needed help, I started helping them anonymously. When Mom got diagnosed with breast cancer in year 4 and they were looking at $75,000 in medical bills not covered by insurance, I paid it all directly to the hospital and specialists. Dad mentioned some insurance settlement that had saved them from debt, never knowing where the money really came from. Thomas needed help with a down payment for his first house, fell $40,000 short of what the bank required. I set up a fake family loan through a separate account and made it look like it came from some distant uncle. He took the money gratefully but still made comments about me needing to get a real job with benefits. Jennifer's dream wedding was going to be ruined when her fiancé lost his job 6 months before the ceremony. I covered the $50,000 shortfall for the venue and catering. She knew the money came from me but downplayed it at family gatherings, calling it help from my little website business that was having a good year. The disconnect was painful. By day, I was running strategy meetings for a multi-million-dollar company, making decisions that affected hundreds of partner businesses. By night, I was getting texts from family members who treated me like the college dropout who got lucky with some internet thing. But I kept helping because I loved them, even if they didn't understand or respect what I'd built. I figured eventually they'd see that my path had worked out, that maybe college wasn't the only way to succeed. I was wrong about that. Dad's 60th birthday was coming up, and I made a decision that I thought was finally going to change everything. I was tired of hiding my success, tired of being treated like the family failure. I bought him a substantial gift, a fully funded retirement account, and planned to be honest about my business for the first time. I practiced what I was going to say for weeks. I wasn't trying to brag or show off. I just wanted them to understand that my unconventional path had actually worked out, maybe even get some of that approval I'd been seeking my whole life. The evening started normal enough. Same house, same furniture, same family dynamics. Thomas showed up in his business casual outfit with his wife, talking about his latest promotion. Jennifer was going on about potentially making junior partner at her accounting firm. When Daniel mentioned something about e-commerce growth, Thomas quickly changed the subject to his kids' Little League stats. Nobody asked me a single question about my life or business during the whole pre-dinner conversation. I waded through discussions about neighborhood gossip, Thomas's kids' achievements, Jennifer's vacation plans. Finally, over dessert, I decided it was time. Dad, Mom, everyone, I started, my heart racing even though I tried to stay calm. I wanted to share some news about my company. Heartland Made was recently valued at $20 million. We've received several acquisition offers, and I've been featured in Business Insider and Entrepreneur magazine. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Mom froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Jennifer and Daniel exchanged glances. Thomas just stared at me. Dad was the first to speak, and his tone was dismissive. What exactly does that mean, Amanda? These internet businesses use all sorts of funny math to come up with these valuations. I kept my cool and explained how business valuations work, talked about our revenue streams, growth trajectory, mentioned our office with 38 employees and partnerships with over 400 manufacturers. Thomas interrupted before I could finish. So you got lucky with this online thing, that's great. But some of us have been building real careers with actual qualifications. He emphasized qualifications while looking at his wife for backup. It's not luck, I replied, trying to stay calm. It's 7 years of working 18-hour days, solving complex problems, and building something meaningful. We've helped save dozens of American manufacturing businesses that were about to close. Mom finally spoke up. That sounds impressive, dear, though I still wish you had finished your degree. Even with this business, education is important. I was getting frustrated but pressed on. Actually, I brought something for Dad. I handed him the envelope with the retirement account documentation. I wanted to make sure you both have a comfortable retirement. Instead of gratitude, Dad's face got angry as he realized what he was looking at. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of charity? We didn't raise you to throw money around like you're better than everyone. That's not my intention at all, I explained. I just wanted to help, the same way I helped with Mom's medical bills, Thomas's house down payment, and Jennifer's wedding. That's when everything exploded. All three of them snapped at once. My secret financial help was suddenly exposed. Dad sputtered. That was all you? Jennifer looked mortified. Thomas's expression turned ugly. Mom just looked confused. You've been secretly paying for things behind our backs! Dad's voice kept getting louder. Playing the big shot with your internet money. I was just trying to help, I replied, my voice getting smaller despite myself. I never wanted recognition. Help? Thomas jumped in. By making us feel like charity cases? Some of us work honest jobs with actual degrees, not getting rich quick with online schemes. It's not a scheme, I insisted. I built a legitimate business that helps American manufacturers reach customers. We employ dozens of people with good salaries and benefits. Dad stood up, his napkin falling to the floor. You drop out of college against our advice, disappear into your little internet world, and now you come back throwing money around like you have all the answers. That's not what I'm doing, I protested, fighting to keep my voice steady. You think your money makes you successful? He continued, his voice getting even louder. You are still just uneducated trash who got lucky. Anyone can get lucky. The room went dead silent. Mom gasped softly but said nothing in my defense. Thomas looked down at his plate with what looked like a slight smile. Jennifer seemed torn between embarrassment and agreement. William, Mom finally whispered, but it was too late and too quiet to matter. No, Dad continued, fully enraged now. I've worked my entire life the right way. Got an education, built a respectable career, raised a family. I will not be shown up in my own home by my dropout daughter. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse. I should go. Yes, you should, Dad spat. Get out of my house, you low life. Your money doesn't make you part of this family. We have standards. Each word hit like a physical blow. I looked around the table, searching for any ally, any sign of support. There was none. Thomas wouldn't even make eye contact. Jennifer stared at her plate. Mom just sat there in shock. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly, walking toward the door with whatever dignity I had left. Nobody followed me out. Nobody called after me. I got to my car with shaking hands, could barely grip the steering wheel. As I drove away from the house I grew up in, I realized something fundamental had broken that could never be fixed. The drive back to my hotel was a blur of streetlights and tears. I had to pull over twice when I couldn't see the road anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. I owned a multi-million-dollar company but was spending the night in a hotel in my hometown because my own family's house was no longer open to me. In that sterile hotel room, I replayed the evening over and over. Had I been too proud, too forward? Should I have handled it differently? The financial help I'd given now felt like a desperate attempt to buy approval I'd never get through achievements alone. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting every cent I'd given my family over the years. The list was staggering: $75,000 for Mom's cancer treatment, $120,000 for Thomas's house, including renovations he requested later, $50,000 for Jennifer's wedding and honeymoon, $22,000 for Dad's car repairs, $35,000 for Mom's kitchen renovation, plus countless smaller expenses, Christmas gifts, birthday presents, emergencies. Nearly $300,000 total, money I never expected back, given freely out of love for a family that had just called me trash. Around midnight, Jennifer texted, "Dad is still upset, but he'll get over it. You know how he gets when his authority is challenged. No apology, no acknowledgement of how horrible the whole thing was. Just an expectation that I'd absorb the abuse and pretend nothing happened." I didn't respond. Instead, I contacted a therapist back in the city where I lived. Dr. Richardson agreed to an emergency virtual session the next day. "Family wounds cut deepest," she observed after I told her everything, "especially when they target the very things we've worked hardest to overcome." Over the next few sessions, Dr. Richardson helped me understand the complex dynamics at play. My success threatened the family hierarchy and the values my parents had built their lives around. My financial help, rather than earning gratitude, had created resentment by highlighting a shift in power they weren't prepared to accept. "Your father's identity is built around being the provider and the authority," she explained. "Your success challenges both roles." I started journaling, documenting not just that horrible night, but patterns throughout my childhood. Subtle ways my entrepreneurial spirit had been discouraged, times when academic achievements were celebrated while business successes were minimized. The constant reminder that without a degree I'd never truly succeed. This process revealed how deeply I'd internalized these messages. Despite outward success, part of me still felt like the family failure, the dropout who had something to prove. That explained my reluctance to openly discuss my achievements and my continuous financial support without recognition. A week after the disaster dinner, Jennifer called. I let it go to voicemail. "Amanda, please call back. Dad feels bad about what happened. We all do, but you have to understand how it looked, you coming in and basically showing off your money. It was insensitive to the rest of us who worked hard for our careers." I deleted the message. The narrative twist was breathtaking. Somehow I'd become the villain for stating facts about my business after years of minimizing my success. Thomas texted next. "Family is family. Let's move past this. No apology, just an expectation that I'd accept my role and the treatment that came with it." 2 weeks later, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to prioritize self-respect over toxic family dynamics. The beach house I'd bought in Naples, Florida, the year before as an investment property, would become my new home. Before leaving Ohio for good, I wrote a letter to my parents. "Dear Mom and Dad, I have spent years seeking your approval and respect. I supported our family financially while downplaying my success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. Despite building a $20 million company that helps preserve American manufacturing jobs, I've been made to feel like the family failure because I chose a different path." When Dad called me uneducated trash and a low life, it revealed how you truly see me. No amount of success will ever change that perception. I can't continue participating in a relationship where my worth is measured by credentials rather than character and achievement. I will always love you both, but I need distance for my own well-being. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. Love. Amanda. I sealed it and mailed it personally. No response came. With my executive assistant's help, I arranged for my belongings in Ohio to be packed and shipped to Florida. I donated most of my furniture and clothes to local charities. I wanted a fresh start with minimal baggage. My company could run remotely with occasional trips back for important meetings. The leadership team I'd built was strong enough to handle day-to-day operations without me physically being there. As I boarded the plane to Florida, I felt a complex mix of grief and freedom. The family I'd tried so hard to please was behind me, but so was the burden of seeking approval I'd never receive. Naples, Florida greeted me with warm sunshine and salt air. Such a contrast to the gray Ohio winter I'd left behind. My beach house sat on a quiet stretch of shoreline, a modern two-story place with floor-to-ceiling, windows facing the Gulf of Mexico. I'd only visited twice for brief vacations, so it felt more like an upscale hotel than a home. Making this place truly mine became a form of therapy. I started with the master bedroom, replacing the generic beige bedding with handcrafted quilts from one of my Heartland-made artisans in North Carolina. The mass-produced art came down, replaced with original pieces from emerging American artists I'd discovered through the business. Every morning I woke up to the sound of waves and authentic creativity surrounding me. The kitchen transformation came next. I installed open shelving to display handmade pottery from our Vermont and New Mexico partners. The industrial appliances stayed, but colorful textiles and locally crafted wooden serving boards warmed the space. Establishing routines became essential. Each morning started with a sunrise walk along the beach, bare feet in cool sand, collecting shells and watching dolphins. I found a local coffee shop run by a Cuban-American family where I became a regular. They greeted me by name, not by my order number. Running the business remotely was easier than I expected. Video conferences replaced in-person meetings, and our systems functioned smoothly without the daily commute and office distractions. I was actually more productive and made clearer decisions from my peaceful new headquarters. My executive team visited after the first month for 3 days of strategic planning on my oceanfront deck. Several commented on positive changes they noticed in my leadership style. "You seem more centered, Marcus," my operations director observed. "More confident in your decisions." He was right. Without the constant undercurrent of seeking family approval, my business instincts flowed more naturally. I trusted my judgment without the shadow of Dad's criticism hanging over every choice. Community involvement became another anchor. I joined the local chamber of commerce and a businesswomen's networking group. Unlike back home where I downplayed my success, here I was open about my company and achievements. The respect came naturally, without the baggage of who I'd been before. I befriended Eliza, who owned a local art gallery, and she introduced me to her circle of accomplished women in their 30s and 40s. They valued each other for present achievements rather than past credentials. Our weekly dinner gatherings became highlights filled with laughter and conversations that never included questions about my education or suggestions that I'd gotten lucky. 3 weeks into my Florida life, Thomas showed up unannounced at my door on a Saturday afternoon. "Nice place," he said, whistling as he surveyed the ocean view from my living room. "Really nice." His appearance was jarring in my new sanctuary. He looked out of place in his button-down shirt and pressed khakis among my casual coastal decor. "What brings you to Florida, Thomas?" I asked, not offering a drink or a seat. "Family?" he replied with that confident smile he'd used to charm our parents since childhood. "And I could use some advice about an investment opportunity, possibly a loan to get in on the ground floor." Without our parents as an audience, his pretense dropped quickly. This was a financial visit, nothing more. "I'm not making loans to family members anymore," I said firmly. "That chapter is closed." His expression hardened. "So that's how it is. You move to your beach mansion and forget where you came from. Dad was right about you." "Dad called me uneducated trash and kicked me out of his house," I reminded him. "Is that what you came here to reinforce?" Thomas backpedaled quickly. "He didn't mean it like that. You know how he gets. Family fights happen. That wasn't a fight. It was a revelation," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans this afternoon." After showing him out, I sat on my deck watching the waves, surprisingly unshaken by the encounter. The boundaries I was establishing felt right, even if they were painful to implement. That evening, I made a significant decision. I contacted my lawyer and established an anonymous scholarship fund at the community college I'd briefly attended. The Amanda Wilson Entrepreneurship Scholarship would provide full tuition and mentorship to 5 students annually who demonstrated entrepreneurial potential but lacked traditional academic advantages. Make sure the selection criteria focus on demonstrated initiative and creative problem solving, not grades, I instructed. And find mentors who've built actual businesses, not just taught business classes. Weeks turned into months, and the pain of family rejection transformed from an acute wound to more like an old injury that occasionally ached. I was building something new, not just a home, but an authentic life aligned with my values rather than someone else's expectations. Then something unexpected happened that brought everything full circle. The Naples Business Journal wasn't a publication I normally read, but Eliza texted me early one morning insisting I pick up a copy. Page 3. You're going to want to see this. There I was, photographed on my deck with the Gulf of Mexico behind me, under the headline, E-commerce innovator brings multi-million-dollar business to Naples. The journalist had done her research, detailing Heartland Made's growth from startup to $20 million valuation, our impact on American manufacturing, and my recent Entrepreneurship Scholarship Foundation. I didn't authorize this, I told Eliza when she called to congratulate me. Public records, she explained. Property transfers, business registrations. Once they knew you were here, the rest was easy to piece together. Besides, it's a great article. She was right. The piece was well-researched and flattering, focusing on business accomplishments rather than personal drama. I thought little more about it until the following week when my phone started lighting up with social media notifications. The article had been picked up by several larger business publications, then shared extensively on LinkedIn and Facebook. Former high school classmates suddenly remembered our friendship. Teachers claimed they'd always seen my potential. Most surprising were messages from small business owners in my hometown thanking me for representing what was possible without following traditional paths. You inspired me to finally launch my business, wrote one former classmate. If you could build something so substantial without a fancy degree, maybe my idea has merit too. The local newspaper back home even ran a condensed version with an additional angle, local entrepreneur makes national impact. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same community that had subtly reinforced my parents' disappointment now celebrated me as a hometown success story. Through this ripple effect of publicity, my family inevitably discovered the full extent of my success. First came a friend request from my cousin Susan, followed by several other extended family members who'd previously shown little interest in my life. Then the text from Mom, I saw the article about your company, very impressive. Dad and I are so proud. No mention of Dad's cruel words, no acknowledgement of the rift, just a casual claim of pride that had been notably absent when I sat at their dinner table. Dad's voicemail arrived the next day, his tone artificially jovial. Amanda, big news about your company in the paper. Always knew you had it in you. There seems to have been a misunderstanding last time we spoke. Call me back when you can. A misunderstanding. That's how he characterized calling his daughter uneducated trash and ordering her out of his house. 3 days later, Mom texted again. We're thinking of visiting Florida next month. Would love to see your new place. Let us know if that works. For you. The message hit my stomach like a stone. 6 weeks of healing, of building a new life free from their judgment, and now they wanted to simply appear at my doorstep, as if nothing had happened. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Richardson. You have several options, she advised after listening to my concerns. You can decline the visit entirely. You can agree, but set strict boundaries about what you will and won't discuss. Or you can see this as an opportunity for honest conversation that might lead to healing, though that requires their willingness to acknowledge the harm done. After careful consideration, I texted Mom, you and Dad are welcome to visit, but we need to have an honest conversation about what happened at his birthday dinner before we can move forward. Please let me know if you're open to that kind of discussion. Her response came quickly. Of course, dear. We just want to put this behind us and be a family again. The phrasing troubled me, that desire to put this behind us without addressing it directly, but I confirmed dates for their visit. As the day approached, I prepared both practically and emotionally, arranged for them to stay at a nearby hotel rather than my home, preserving my personal space, role-played difficult conversations with Dr. Richardson, practicing setting boundaries without becoming defensive. They arrived on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. I met them at a beachfront restaurant for lunch, a public setting that would help moderate the initial interaction. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had in Ohio. Dad's confident posture seemed diminished, Mom more nervous than I remembered. This place is something else, Dad said. gesturing at the turquoise water visible through the restaurant windows. "You've done well for yourself, Amanda. The slight emphasis on for yourself didn't escape me. The implication that my success existed in isolation from family values." "Thank you," I replied simply, not filling the awkward silence that followed. Mom jumped in with small talk about their flight, the weather, how different Florida was from Ohio. I responded politely, but didn't help carry the conversation. Finally, after our food arrived, Dad cleared his throat. "About what happened at my birthday dinner." "You called me uneducated trash and a lowlife," I stated calmly. "You told me to get out of your house and that my money didn't make me part of the family." His face flushed. "I was surprised by the news about your business. It caught me off guard. I may have overreacted. Not an apology, an excuse." "I need to understand," I continued, maintaining eye contact. "Was that reaction about me sharing my success, or about learning I'd been helping the family financially?" "Both," Mom interjected. "It felt like you were showing off, like you were saying you're better than us now." "I never said or thought that," I replied. "I spent years hiding my success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. I helped financially because I could and because I wanted to support the family I love." The conversation continued in this vein throughout lunch. No genuine apology emerged, only justifications and attempts to minimize the severity of what had happened. The subtext became increasingly clear. They were here because my public success made rejecting me socially awkward, not because they'd reconsidered their assessment of my worth. As we finished our meal, I made a decision. "I'd like to show you my home, but first I need to be very clear about something. I won't pretend that dinner never happened. I won't accept being called names or having my choices denigrated. If you want a relationship moving forward, it has to be based on mutual respect." They exchanged glances before Dad nodded stiffly. "That seems reasonable." When they arrived at my beach house later that afternoon, their expressions as they took in the expansive ocean view told me everything. This tangible evidence of my success was impossible to dismiss or minimize. The $20 million valuation was no longer an abstract number, but manifested in beachfront real estate and tasteful luxury. "This is quite something," Dad managed, his voice tight. As I showed them through the house, pointing out handcrafted items from Heartland-made artisans that decorated each room, I realized something profound. Their approval, which I'd sought for so long, no longer held the power it once did. I was proud of this home and the business that made it possible, regardless of their reaction. That revelation was perhaps the most valuable outcome of their visit, worth more than any apology they might have offered. We talked for hours on the deck as the sun set over the Gulf. No dramatic reconciliation occurred, no tearful group hug that magically healed decades of misunderstanding. Instead, we reached a fragile understanding, a starting point rather than a conclusion. Moving forward, I explained as the evening drew to a close, I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but with clear boundaries. I won't accept being demeaned for my educational choices or having my success attributed to luck rather than hard work. They agreed, though I sensed Dad's reluctance in his tight smile and qualified responses. Mom seemed more genuinely receptive, perhaps recognizing for the first time her role in enabling dynamics that had caused so much pain. After they returned to Ohio, I reflected on the visit and the path that had led me here. The healing process was far from complete, but significant steps had been taken. I maintained limited contact with my parents in the months that followed, brief weekly phone calls that gradually became less awkward. My relationship with my siblings evolved differently. Jennifer eventually offered a genuine apology for her role in the family dynamics, and we slowly rebuilt a connection based on adult friendship rather than childhood patterns. Thomas remained distant, occasionally sending holiday greetings but making no real effort to understand or acknowledge the harm done. The most important lesson from all this? Your value isn't determined by others' perceptions, especially those clouded by outdated beliefs or expectations. Success comes in countless forms, often unexpected ones. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most authentic and fulfilling paths forward.